Khalil Jahshan is the executive director of Arab Center in Washington, D.C. He joins me now live from the U.S. Capitol. Great to have you here with us on TRT World. Now, I'm finding it very difficult to read what's on Netanyahu's mind. On the one hand, he is conducting a ground operation in Rafah. He has invaded that area. But on the other, he is sending a delegation to see whether or not a ceasefire can be reached. So what exactly is on his mind right now?
I wish I knew, but that's the million-dollar question. Most of his people do not understand what he's doing, and that's why he's not necessarily the most popular prime minister right now in Israel. This emanates basically from all kinds of contradiction and contradictory agendas. His own personal agenda to stay in power and to avoid legal charges that he's been facing for a while. So his conduct of the war has been questioned by many people. And the statements he's been making are very contradictory. On the one hand, he talks on the phone with the president and he meets with the Secretary of State, and he commits to certain positions, yet as soon as they turn around or they hang up, somehow he issues statements to the contrary. That has been the case over the past several weeks. It has frustrated the administration at the White House to no end. And therefore, they were somewhat surprised by this gesture by Hamas to accept an agreement with Israel based on ideas that have been exchanged. I totally disagree with the analysis from Israel that Hamas somehow went and hijacked the process or somehow dictated, if you will, the content of the agreement. This is essentially a statement based on ideas exchanged between the two parties indirectly via mediators and via the U.S. For weeks. So there is no way, knowing how negotiations are done, there is no way Hamas can hijack this process. What they did, they took questions raised and directed at them and answered these questions in good faith. Now, if the question that remains to be answered is Israel going to reciprocate? Israel, of course, has the right to go back and question some of these items, but not necessarily to dictate the terms of reference for a new agreement, considering the fact that we've been going back and forth for weeks.
Right, and this brings me to the influence that the U.S. has over Tel Aviv. Now, realistically speaking, can Washington force Israel to agree to a ceasefire agreement?
A lot of people here at home in the United States and abroad would like to see that, but unfortunately, I don't see it happening. Having observed the decision-making process of this administration from day one, having met with officials at least 7 times since the beginning of this war, I have a feeling that the U.S. has engaged in political self-emasculation. It has weakened its own stand by simply acquiescing to Israeli diktat on this issue, by insisting that Israel needs all the time in the world to finish the job. I mean, what is finishing the job? Here we are 7 months later, and Israel is nowhere near any of its 3 main objectives, as your colleague Muhammad mentioned earlier in this conversation. Faced with total failure, now the Israelis, and under the leadership of Mr. Netanyahu, are trying not only to dictate to the Palestinian side, to Hamas, but they're trying to dictate to the United States. And unfortunately, with a weakened stand by this administration, they have gotten away with murder. And it's by choice. It's for domestic political reasons and other reasons, personal reasons. The president hasn't been able to challenge the Israelis. He's frustrated, he's upset, he calls Netanyahu names, but frankly, that doesn't make appropriate policy for a superpower.
Okay, if I may, is the question really is whether Joe Biden has been able to challenge Netanyahu, or perhaps does he really want to?
He doesn't want to. I've known Mr. Biden for many years as a legislator in the Senate and as vice president. I don't think he is, his DNA doesn't allow him to challenge Israel. He resents that. He doesn't think it is necessary. So he simply continues to ask Israel to do, quote unquote, the right thing. And that could have happened maybe with other leaders in Israel. I'm not sure this works with Netanyahu. He is not necessarily the ally that Mr. Biden thinks he is. He is very stubborn. He has a personal agenda. Other presidents in the United States have said worse words about him when dealing with him. And the problem, frankly, is even larger, larger than Mr. Netanyahu. It's the problem is Israel, Israeli policy, Israeli public opinion, and that's why Mr. Biden finds it very difficult to challenge that, because in his own mind he distinguishes between Israel and Netanyahu. He is willing to challenge Netanyahu up to a point, but not willing to challenge Israel at any point.
I wonder what is the tone that the president is going to use, President Joe Biden. I mean, see, looking at the bigger picture, the U.S. is going into elections in a matter of a few months now. And correct me if I'm wrong, the longer the war in Gaza continues, the slimmer the chances are for President Joe Biden to get re-elected. I wonder at what point Biden is actually going to wake up and be like, hey, listen, I cannot let this continue for any longer. What would it take for Biden to actually challenge Netanyahu?
I think the anger that I referred to earlier with regards to Mr. Biden and has been acknowledged by people around him, mostly emanates from your question, emanates from the point that he has come to realize that this war has lasted too long. Apparently, in their naivete, he and his staff thought that this war is a matter of maybe 4 weeks, maybe a month, maybe 2 months at best. But here we are in the 7th month, almost finished, and approaching the 8th month. And as I said, objectives have not been achieved. So chances are experts within the administration and outside the administrations are predicting right now that this war could go on even beyond the American elections. I just can't see the president's chances to be reelected for a second term as improving if this war continues. And the way it is right now, with the divisions within the party, with the divisions even within the Jewish community, youth in this country taking the lead, as you are just showing on the screen, it's reminiscent of the late stage in the war in Vietnam, when youth became a catalyst, a political catalyst, if you will, in shifting public opinion. And public opinion has already shifted. I mean, we have a majority, let's say a plurality at least, in some parts of the country, but a majority in general, more than 50% to 55, even up to 60 in some polls, are opposed to this war in terms of the excessive nature of the methods used by the Israelis against particularly civilian targets in Palestine. So if this continues as we get closer to the elections, maybe the wisdom will strike, and the president would go a little bit beyond a change of tone. We've heard changes of tones by him before, but that's not enough. We need a change in substance.
Khalil Jahshan, thanks very much for talking to us here on TRT World. Really appreciate your taking out the time.